In today's WoodStory, we are making the famous angled Christmas tree once again. But in this video, I'm going to share several tips, tricks, and a jig that's going to make making these nesting Christmas trees in 3 different sizes a breeze. So go grab your tools and let's start this WoodStory. This project is a great project that can easily be made in just a few hours, and it's also super great if you want to batch a bunch of these to sell at your local market coming up. For the full step-by-step plans and dimensions for all 3 trees, go grab my digital plans from my website. Simply scan the QR code listed on your screen right now using your phone's camera. As a quick overview, this angled tree that we are building are made up from 8 pieces of wood. From these 8 pieces, 4 of them are the same length. And these 4 pieces have an angle cut at each end that is parallel to each other. The other 4 pieces of wood are all different lengths. But these pieces are cut with angles that face away from each other. All my pieces are now ready, and as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I am using scrap wood, which is why I ended up with all of these weird sizes. They are not cut to the correct length at this point, which means I'm gonna have to do a little bit more work now in order to just sort these to utilize my longest pieces for the longest measurements and the shortest for the shortest, and so on. If you are starting with regular fence pickets, which is what I usually recommend for this project, then you don't really have to do much work. You don't even necessarily need a planer or a jointer. Just make sure that when you do go to the lumber yard to pick up these pickets, that you pick the ones that are actually nice, flat, and straight. Because if you start with crap, you're gonna end up with crap. That's just the reality of things. But if you actually pick nice pieces, you can get some really decent results. I have decided to use a thickness that is 1 3/4 in width. That is personal. You could go with 2 or even 3 if you want. I would not go any less than that. This just allowed me to utilize the most of my scrap pieces, which is why I decided on that. And then the other thing that I have gone ahead and done is I have gone ahead and I have actually made the 1 angle cut on all of these, just on the one end. And this angle cut is a 60-degree, but if you're setting it on your miter saw, you're gonna set it to 30. So just to avoid confusion this time, because I know last time in my last video from 2 years ago, I kept saying that we were cutting 30-degree angles. That is not correct. It is actually a 60-degree, but when you set your miter saw, it only accounts for half of that because it's like a 90. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that I will not get into this time. But you are actually cutting a 60-degree, but the miter saw needs to be set to 30. So remember 30 is the magic number. So I've gone ahead and I have cut all of those just on the one side. But now it is time to cut the other side. And that's where I want to show you a couple of tricks. The first thing that you need to realize is that there are 2 different cuts in this plan. There is the cut where there is the angle that's going this way, and the other side also will be going that same way up. So that is the one shape that we will be making. The second one is going to be opposite. That angle is going to turn around and it's going to be one going up this way and the other one coming down this way. And it is always important that when you are referring to the measurements, that you refer from the longest point to the longest point. So if there's 2 long points like this one, you're going to be measuring this distance, okay? And when it is opposite, you're going to pick the one long end to the other one that would be the shorter one, but you always have to start from the longest when possible. That's going to make the difference. Don't mess that up because otherwise your measurements will be incorrect. But let me show you how to now measure these out so that you get the accurate measurement when you go over on the miter saw. So as I was mentioning, I have already made my very first cut. And I do recommend doing that whenever possible, just because it's going to make it a lot easier for you to measure. Now I'm going to just quickly turn this one around. Now, my first measurement is 9/7/8. So I'm going to take my measuring tape from the longest side right here, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to hold it down. And then I'm going to find that 9/7/8 and I'm going to mark it. And then I'm going to use my square and I'm going to trace it. Now, this is not enough. If I just took this over to the miter saw right now, I wouldn't be able to actually see the accurate measurement. So then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to hold this up here. I'm actually going to turn it around because that's what you're supposed to do so that the mark is aligned. So right now you can see that I have the ability to line it up right here on this side, same one, but now I can trace this side as well. And that's going to show where the 9/7/8 is going to go. Now, at this point, if I got over on the miter saw, I would have no idea what way to cut it. Am I cutting it this way or am I cutting it that way? By the time I get over there, I'm going to forget. So what I do like to do is I'm just going to take my pencil and I'm going to make a mark in the direction that my blade needs to go. Now, this is not the mark that you actually want to follow. You still need to follow this mark, but this is going to give you that visual reminder when you get over to the miter saw that your blade needs to cut in this direction. So let's go over to the miter saw and then I'll show you what that looks like. I have gone ahead and I have turned off the light in my shop because I want to show you this laser liner that I have on my miter saw. And I realize not everyone has a laser, but if you do have it, definitely use it. But either way, this is going to help you visually understand where it is you're making the cut, because I realize that sometimes that can be tricky. So again, remember what I said, we're measuring from the very outside to the outside, which is why we drew the line here. So when we go to line up our board on the miter saw, we want to make sure that the corner of our blade is hitting the corner of this line right here. Some people might be tempted to think that you have to go over here, but if you actually went over here, then you would be cutting all the way down here, which means that our cut would be way too long. So you're actually cutting right there, which is why it's very, very helpful to have both this line, but also the top one, which is why I will always make that mark. It's just going to make it so much easier. Now, let me show you when I actually apply this to the laser, and then you can see what it looks like. And there you go. Pretty much right on the money. My line might not have been 100% accurate, but that could be because this might not be fully straight. But either way, I hit it exactly where I want it, right here at the top. And that is how we want every single cut to be for this tree to align perfectly. So with these tips and tricks, go ahead and cut your 8 pieces per tree to their final size as per the measurements in the plans. Now, I like to do all the odd size pieces first, which is 4 of them, and then I will proceed to do the same size pieces with this little trick. We're ready to make the repeatable cuts that the plans call for. There is at least 4 of the same size in every single one of these sizes that we're making. But the difference is that this time the angle is going to go the same way. So it's going to come this way and this way. And because I need to make 4 cuts in a row, I don't want to go and have to measure them over and over again. And especially if you're batching out a whole bunch of trees, chances are you just want to set up your miter saw and get to work. So here's a little trick for you. You can use a different piece that you've already cut with that 30-degree angle, and you can clamp it to your miter saw like I have done right here. Now, you do need to make sure that this is going to cut at the right place before you place your sacramental stop block piece. But the difference is that once you've set it, this line that you've already cut is going to mate perfectly with this one. And there's one key element to why you want to do that. Because when you come over with a piece of wood, you might be tempted to put it this way. And that is going to cause issues because that will put the angle in the wrong direction. So by you knowing that you have to actually mate the 2 pieces, that they have to connect perfectly, you're not going to get the angle wrong in this situation. But again, remember, this only works for the 4 pieces that need to be the same size. So don't try to do this on all of them or you will make some mistakes. So let's try to avoid that. So I have set this up. This is gonna work perfectly. I'm gonna make my cut, and then I'm just gonna grab some 3 other random pieces, and I'm gonna get this done in seconds. Let me show you. And there you go. 4 perfectly symmetric pieces. And I only had to measure it once, set it up once, and done. Perfect. I'm going to show you how to make one of the simplest jigs that are going to make your life a lot easier when you're putting together these Christmas trees. This is my jig that I've had now for 2 years, the exact same one that I showed in that video that I made 2 years ago. And we're going to make that same one once again. But I will tell you one thing, and that is, don't be scared to make more than one. If you make 2 or even 3 of these, it's going to make glue up so much easier, because there are 3 different points on this tree, up at the top and at the bottom, where you need this jig in order to be able to glue everything together quickly and accurately. So if you want to make 3, go for it. It's super easy, and all you need is some scrap wood. So to get started, you are going to need a 2x4, and as well, you want to make sure that the one side is completely flat. So when you go and you look through your scrap pile, don't pick the one that's all bent and all weird. Pick the one that's actually nice and flat, that's going to sit nice and flat on a table, because that's going to make your glue ups a lot easier. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just mark down the middle. You don't have to be too accurate, but just go right down the middle here. Okay, and we're going to cut that over on the miter saw. But before we do that, I'm also going to make a mark 1 inch down. And this is just approximately, but 1 inch is a good point. And you should still have about 3.5 inches total in here. So, but I'm marking 1 inch down. And now we're going to go over in the miter saw, and we're going to cut this, and then we're going to make 2 more cuts before this jig will be done. So let's go over there now. So I've just cut the 2 pieces, and you can see the mark is still showing on both sides. And now what we want to do is we want to cut a 30-degree angle. And again, remember, I'm saying 30 because that is what you're setting your miter saw to, but it's actually a 60-degree angle. But from the miter perspective, you're going to set it to 30. And then what you want is you want your point to hit right here on that corner right here, so that it's essentially going to go down this way right here. And that's going to be what we need to cut away on both sides. So you're going to do it first here, and then you're going to do it on the other side. The pieces have been cut over on the miter saw, and remember, we cut the straight line first, and then we cut the angled cuts afterwards. So this is essentially what your pieces should look like. And then as well, I made a triangle from just using one of the sides. And again, my miter saw was set to that 30 degree, which will create the 2 60-degree angles. And I did that on both sides. And that gave me this triangle here. And that's important because this is going to be the spacer piece that goes in and actually clamps everything together. But you will need 1 more piece of scrap wood. So just another flat piece of scrap wood like this, because that's going to be butted up against here. So the idea is that you're going to take your triangle and you're going to put it together, and you want to have a little bit of a gap up here, because when you go to clamp the pieces like these 2, you're going to sit them inside like this. And you want this angle to be able to go all the way up in order to have that relief so that it's not getting pushed in the wrong direction. So just make sure that you have a little bit of a gap up here at the top. It doesn't have to be too big. If you are using really thick wood, obviously just keep that in mind. But if you are using thinner wood, then just a small gap like that is more than enough. And then when you are done with that, you're going to use that triangle and you're going to push that in, and that is going to essentially clamp everything together enough where these pieces will connect beautiful. But let's start by actually attaching it, and then I'll show you how it works. And while I'm assembling this jig, I'm curious to know, have you ever built this type of angled tree before? And do you happen to have any tips to share for how to make the process easier? If you do, let me know in the comments below. Okay, so now the pieces are connected. And then all you do is you take your clamp, any clamp, and there you go. Another quick tip is to add some tuck tape to both the triangle and the jig itself. This will ensure that when you go to do your glue up, that the pieces aren't glued to the jig itself. You can also use painter's tape, but from previous experience, it can sometimes leave some blue tape behind, or green if that's what you're using. So tuck tape is a better choice in my opinion. I want to take a quick minute to say thank you so much for watching this video. Your support means the world to me. Every time you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, it means that I can continue to bring videos such as this one to you. So thank you very much. But there are other ways that you can connect with me as well. You will find me both over on Instagram, but you will also find me over on my Patreon page, where you can become a VIP member or a regular member, depending on your preference. The benefit is that I post behind the scenes content outside of the bi-weekly videos that I'm making. So I'd love to see you over there. I'd love to meet you, and I'd love to hear more about who you are and what you're looking for in videos in general. So go meet me over on the Patreon page, and a huge thank you to all the Patreon members who are already following me and who are supporting me. I really appreciate you. I'm going to show you a trick for gluing up the angles that's going to make it a little bit easier and possibly a little bit faster. When you have your ends that you know are going to be the one that's going to butt up against each other. So for example, for the top right here, I know that I have my piece right here that's going to go up, and then I have the other piece that's going to go and butt right up against that. But this piece that's butting right up against here, this is end grain. And the problem with end grain is that it is extremely porous. Think of it as a straw. The fibers are going this way, which means every time you apply glue to this end, it just gets sucked through that straw, which means it's going to absorb a lot of the glue. So sometimes what ends up happening is when you have a glue point like this, you'll glue it, you'll clamp it, you think everything is fine, you go to take it off, and bam, it snaps away. And that is because literally all the glue went inside of the piece of wood. So one thing that you can do to avoid that is you can take a little bit of glue, and you can see that mine is already yellow. And all I've done is I've just added a thin layer of glue. I spread it out and I allow it to dry. Just give it the half an hour. Like, you don't want to have a thick layer on, just a thin one, because that's going to seal off the edges so that those straw essentially, they are blocked now. So now when I go and put on a second layer of glue, it's actually going to bond, which means when I go and do this, it's going to work the first time versus me having a weak glue joint. So I highly recommend that. So let me show you now how to clamp this one together. So I have my two pieces, and I am allowing this to go all the way up in that little space that we talked about. And now I have my second piece that was already pre-glued, and I'm going to add some glue to it. Again, just a thin layer. You don't need a crazy amount, because then you're just going to have a ton of glue spill out. Okay, so now we have our glue, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to butt it all the way up against here. And you'll see that I put the tape on here, and that's just going to help so that my glue doesn't actually stick to the jig here. And I'm going to make sure it's nice and butted up against here. And now I'm taking my triangle and I'm going to put that right here. And all I need now is one clamp. I'm going to put it down. And I do like to have this down here too, just so that it actually provides consistent pressure. And I'm just going to do it gently. I'm not going to do like a crazy amount of pressure. Just want it to be actually on here and held in place. Wait 30 minutes and this joint is going to be perfect now. I have finished cutting all the pieces for the 3 different trees. That's a bit of a hard thing for me to say. And it is time to do some assembly. Now, as part of this process, I've already shown you how to glue up certain sections, primarily these corners here, which is why we made that jig. And I have gone ahead and done that on the big tree right here. And that is what I would also recommend that you do for the other trees. Start with those 3 different corners. You want to have the top corner, glued up, and you want to have the bottom ones glued up, because that's going to make the rest of the progress a lot easier. Because once you have these and they're dry and you can take them off, then it's a lot easier to actually do the middle pieces, because then you can just line them up really nicely and find the connecting point and make sure that it's equal on both sides. Now, it should be approximately a 1.5 inch of an overlap, plus minus. I do recommend just kind of playing around with it just a little bit, because thickness will matter. If your thickness is not the exact same as mine, then it may shift just slightly, and that's okay. The other thing is too, that if you are making these nesting trees where you want to have 3 of them inside of each other, it is also important that the trees still fit within each other. So I do recommend doing the big one first, and then proceed to do the middle one and then the smaller one, because that way, once the big one is done, if for whatever reason you kind of messed up a little bit on the big one, then you can still shift things just a little bit on the middle one and the little one in order to make it fit perfectly on the inside. With the bottom and the top on this tree already connected, and of course with the glue already dried, the middle pieces can be added with both glue and brad nails if you choose. Now, usually the brad nails are a good idea if you're making a bunch of these, just because most of us won't have enough clamps, and it's going to act as a clamp. But if you just want to use glue, that is plenty strong on its own, so you don't need to use the brad nails, and that will also allow you to avoid nail marks. The larger tree is now done, and it is fully assembled. And the reason that I said that you should always start with the biggest tree first is because if you actually want the other trees to be able to nest inside of it, you do need this one as a reference, because very small adjustments can mean that it either can or cannot fit inside of the next tree. So for the middle one, I have gone ahead and I have glued up the bottoms and even added the little support piece on the bottom here. And I'm just gonna place it right in here right now, and you can see it fits perfect. Same thing for the top. I have also gone ahead and I have glued that top together, and I'm gonna place that one inside. Now, there's a couple places you could place it. You could place it here, or you could place it here. But the plans are meant for it to be placed up here at the top. And you'll see that there's a little bit of a gap right here, a little bit of wiggle room. And that's what I mean, like the smallest little adjustments, if you put it in the wrong way, that can make a difference. So now that these are in, you just need the brace pieces. And those brace pieces go right here. And now you can see, I want to have this distance and this approximately the same. So I'm gonna move the bottom all the way up, but now I can't get any further, but that's okay. Now I know that's the max that it can go, and it's still going to be able to fit in here. And then same thing at the top. I'm gonna squeeze that down, give it just a little bit of room. Perfect. And I'm gonna verify that this distance looks decent. I do think I have to come down just a little bit here, a little bit there. Perfect. And now the inside tree is going to fit, the middle tree is going to fit inside of the big tree. And all we have to do is actually just attach it. Now, I do like adding a little bit of glue here, and then I will add some nails. Add a little bit of glue here. A little bit of glue there. Put it back in. Now I am going to nail it in. Here's one. There's two. And now I can go ahead and do the same thing at the top here, because now these are connected. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue here, a little glue there. Then this time I'm squeezing this up and this down. Again, making sure that everything looks good before I commit to it. There we go. The tree is now in, and I can of course add a couple more nails if needed, but it is now done. And now we can do the same thing with the little tree. So let's keep going here. So now that we have the middle tree rolled done, it's time for the little tree. Now I didn't actually add the small one, so I'm just gonna lay that one gently here. I'll put that right there. And the top, make sure it's going the right way. And this time, the top is gonna go on the inside. It is not gonna fit in there like we did before. This one's gonna sit right here. We're gonna have the brace pieces. It's gonna be approximately right there. And then this is gonna go up until everything is about right in the middle. And as you can see, this one definitely have a bit more space. But I played around with the different sizes to actually make it nest inside of each other. Great. Now, this last one can be a little bit tricky to get your nail gun into. So that may or may not be possible. But at least at this point, it should be just resting on here. So it's not really a big deal if you have to take it out in order to add those last nails. Or you can just clamp it if you don't want to do nails. You could just clamp it. Okay, there we have it. The trees. Double check if they still fit inside of each other. There you go. Nesting trees. Still gotta add that one. I added the bottom for the last tree using some glue and brad nails, and then I decided to give the trees a stain in the color walnut. I just find that it gives it a nice rustic look. And just like that, these nesting trees were ready to be displayed. And there are so many different ways that you could customize it. You could add a string of light, or you can even add these little flameless candles that will really brighten up the trees. Just don't use real candles. They are made out of wood after all, and we don't want them to go up in flames. I'm curious to know, how would you customize your trees? Don't forget to grab the plans in the description or via the QR code listed on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. For more great videos and do-it-yourself content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And you can also follow me over on my Patreon page via the link here. I'll see you soon in my next Wood Story.